Commander Vexithor had seen a lot in his 40 years of service. He had 4 arms, each capable of crushing steel, scales that could deflect plasma fire, and a reputation that made junior officers wet themselves across 3 quadrants. He stood at the front of the grand arena, watching his prize student complete yet another flawless hunt simulation. Kralzith moved like liquid death. 9 feet of chitinous muscle and blade-like limbs, he dispatched the holographic prey in 4.3 seconds. A new record. Again. "Acceptable," Vexthor announced, which in predator culture was basically a marriage proposal. Kralzith clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. He had trained for this his entire life. Born on Skarnok, a death world where the plants literally tried to eat you and the weather had opinions about your survival, he represented the pinnacle of galactic predator evolution. 500 simulated hunts, 500 kills, 0 failures. The other instructors gathered around, their various appendages crossing in gestures of respect. There was Throk, a wolf-like creature from the ice moons. Susovara, who was basically a very angry cloud of sentient knives. And Bob, who insisted his species didn't need a scary name because their kill record spoke for itself. "The Council has a mission," Vexthor continued, pulling up a holographic display. "New species discovered. Sector 774. Classification pending." Kralzith leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering. "Parameters? Bipedal bilateral symmetry, no natural weapons, no armor plating, no venom sacs." Vexthor paused for effect. "Essentially mobile meatbags." The assembled predators chittered with amusement. Another easy cataloging mission. "They call themselves humans," Vexthor added, his tone dripping with the kind of disdain usually reserved for prey species who had the audacity to develop space travel. "From a planet called Earth. Unremarkable gravity, temperate climate, 1 moon. They achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 3 standard cycles ago." "I volunteer," Kralzith said immediately. Vexthor's primary eyes narrowed. "This is a first contact scenario. The Council requires assessment of threat level and integration potential." "Which requires a demonstration of superiority," Kralzith replied smoothly. "Standard protocol. I locate a human in isolation, perform the dominance display, establish the hierarchy. They submit or flee. We classify them accordingly. I can have this completed by 3rd meal." It was textbook. First contact with a new prey species always followed the same pattern. The Predator Council had refined this process over millennia. Show up, look terrifying, watch them panic, fill out the paperwork, maybe grab lunch. Bob nodded approvingly. "The youngster shows initiative." "Very well," Vexthor rumbled. He pulled up a data file. "We have identified a suitable location, remote area, single human, minimal chance of interference." He transferred the coordinates to Kralzith's combat computer. "Remember, this is first contact. Follow protocol. Make it memorable." Kralzith saluted with all 4 blade arms. "When have I ever deviated from protocol, Commander?" Vexthor watched his star pupil stride toward the shuttle bay and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. A tiny, almost imperceptible sensation in his primary stomach. If pressed, he might have called it concern. But that was ridiculous. What could possibly go wrong? Jake Hendricks was having the kind of day that made a man reconsider his life choices, not in a philosophical way. More in a why am I still breathing kind of way. His truck, a 2015 Peterbilt that he'd named Deborah after his ex-wife because they both made suspicious noises and leaked fluids, had decided that Nevada in July was the perfect time for the AC to die. The temperature inside the cab had reached what scientists would call inadvisable for carbon-based life. He pulled into a truck stop called Cactus Jack, that looked like it had been built in 1952 and never renovated out of spite. The parking lot was mostly empty, which made sense because anyone with functioning brain cells would avoid this place. But Jake needed coffee, and more importantly, he needed to be anywhere that wasn't inside Deborah. His phone buzzed. Again. It was Karen's lawyer. Again, Jake declined the call. Also again. 40 years old, former Marine, current truck driver, permanent resident of the Why Did I Marry That Woman support group. His daily routine consisted of driving, avoiding his ex-wife's increasingly creative attempts to squeeze more alimony from him, and dealing with acid reflux that felt like a xenomorph trying to escape his chest cavity. He trudged toward the truck stop entrance, his boots kicking up dust in the parking lot. The heat shimmered off the asphalt in waves that made the world look like it was melting, which, honestly, felt appropriate. Inside, the AC was broken here too, because of course it was. The cashier, a kid who looked about 19 and supremely uninterested in existence, didn't even look up from his phone. "And coffee fresh?" Jake asked. "Define fresh. Will it kill me? Probably not today. Good enough." Jake poured himself a cup of what could generously be called coffee and technically qualified as a liquid. He grabbed a sad-looking sandwich from the refrigerated section, squinted at the expiration date, decided he'd survived worse, and headed to the counter. His phone buzzed again. Karen's lawyer. The man had persistence. Jake had to give him that. "That'll be $8.50, the kid said. Jake handed over a 10. "Keep the change. Live dangerously." "Thanks, mister." Back outside, Jake stood in the parking lot and contemplated his existence. The sandwich tasted like regret. The coffee tasted like it had been filtered through someone's gym socks. His truck was making a new noise that sounded expensive. This was it. This was his life. 40 years of questionable decisions had led him to this exact moment, standing in a Nevada parking lot, drinking terrible coffee, slowly being cooked alive by the sun. He noticed something weird near the edge of the lot, a shimmer, like heat waves, but wrong somehow. Probably the energy drink he'd consumed 3 hours ago. That thing had more chemicals than a meth lab. Jake finished his coffee, crushed the cup, and tossed it toward a trash can. Missed. Didn't care. "Not today, Satan," he muttered, heading back toward Deborah. That's when the shimmer moved. Jake stopped, stared. The shimmer was definitely moving. And it was getting bigger, and it was making a sound like somebody tuning a radio through a blender. He sighed deeply. "I don't have time for this," he said to nobody in particular. "I really, truly, genuinely do not have time for whatever this is." The shimmer intensified. Jake really needed to stop drinking those energy drinks. Kralzith, decloaked in full ceremonial warplate. His blade arms extended. His mandibles spread wide in the traditional display of inevitable death. He had practiced this moment thousands of times. The prey would see him. The prey would experience primal terror. The prey would flee or submit. Then he would file his report and be home in time for the evening feeding. The human just stared at him. Kralzith waited. Sometimes prey needed a moment to process their impending doom. The human took a sip of its beverage. "Nope," it said. From orbit, Pip's voice crackled through Kralzith's comm implant. Pip was a Quellan, a species that looked like a nervous potato with tentacles and served as mission support. "Kral, I'm reading elevated heart rate in the target. Elevated respiration. It sees you. Initiate Phase 2. Kralzith activated his armor's resonance projectors, creating a subsonic frequency designed to trigger fear responses in mammalian nervous systems. The air around him vibrated with menace. The human rubbed its face. "I'm too tired for this. I'm genuinely too tired." "Kral, the human is speaking," Pip said helpfully. "I'm running translation algorithms. It appears to be expressing exhaustion." "Exhaustion?" Kralzith clicked his mandibles in confusion. "Fear. It must be expressing fear. The readings are very clear. Exhaustion, possibly irritation, definitely not fear." This was wrong. This was all wrong. Kralzith had studied 17 different prey species. All of them had responded appropriately to the display of inevitable death. You don't spend 40,000 credits on ceremonial warplate for nothing. He tried again, this time adding the roar of conquest. A sound that his people had perfected over millennia to resonate at frequencies that caused involuntary muscle contractions in prey species. The human winced. "Dude, my head already hurts. Could you not?" "Kral, I think there might be a malfunction in your intimidation suite," Pip offered nervously. "There is no malfunction," Kralzith hissed. He moved closer, his 9-foot frame towering over the human. His blade arms caught the sunlight, gleaming with obvious sharpness. He was a masterpiece of predatory evolution. He was death given form. The human looked up at him with the expression of someone who had just been told the DMV line was longer than expected. "Listen," the human said, "I don't know if this is like a prank show or if I'm having a stroke, but I've been driving for 11 hours. My ex-wife's lawyer won't stop calling me, and I just paid $8.50 for a sandwich that I'm pretty sure violated the Geneva Convention. So whatever this is, can it wait? Can it wait forever? That would be great." Kralzith's tactical training kicked in. The prey was attempting to negotiate. This was a sign of intelligence. Intelligence meant it understood the danger. He just needed to make the threat clearer. He activated his plasma blade. It hummed to life with a sound that had made warlords reconsider their life choices. The human's eyes narrowed. "Is that like a lightsaber? Are you seriously doing a lightsaber thing right now?" "Pibek, what is a lightsaber?" "Checking Earth databases. It appears to be a fictional weapon from their entertainment media." "Kral, I think the human is mocking you." "Mocking me." Kralzith felt something he had never experienced in 500 hunts. Uncertainty. "Prey doesn't mock predators. I'm sending you the updated behavioral data on humans. Kral, there's something you should know. Humans have this thing where they respond to stress with humor. They also have something called spite, and something called, something called having a really bad day." The human started walking toward its vehicle. Kralzith moved to block its path. This was it, the moment of submission. The human would finally understand the natural order. The human stopped, looked up at him, and sighed the sigh of a man who had been asked to work a double shift on his day off. "Fine," the human said. "Okay, fine. You know what? Let's do this. Let's absolutely do this. Because why not? Why not fight an alien in a parking lot? That's exactly how this day should end." "Kral!" Pip's voice was rising in pitch, which for Quellens meant panic was setting in. "I think you should disengage. The tactical computer is giving me very strange readings." "What kind of readings?" "The kind that say abort mission right now." But Kralzith was a warrior. Warriors didn't abort missions because of strange readings. He would regret this decision in approximately 45 seconds. Jake Hendricks had reached a point of emotional exhaustion that philosophers would call transcendent and therapists would call concerning. He had moved beyond fear, beyond reason, beyond caring about consequences. He had entered the psychological space that humans occupy when they are too tired to be scared and too annoyed to think straight. It was the same mental state that made people fight bears, argue with cops, or try to defuse bombs after 6 Red Bulls. It was pure, distilled, weaponized spite. Kralzith lunged forward with the kind of strike that had won him the Academy's Golden Blade 3 years running. Precise, lethal, unavoidable. Jake ducked under it, mostly by accident because he was reaching for his truck keys. The blade whistled over his head, close enough that he felt the displacement of air. His hand closed around his thermos, the one he'd filled with truck stop coffee that could probably strip paint. Without thinking, which was becoming a theme, Jake swung the thermos like he was trying to hit a home run. It connected with one of Kralzith's arm joints with a hollow thunk. Kralzith stumbled back, his compound eyes wide with shock. In 500 combat simulations, prey had never hit him with a beverage container. "Pip," he hissed into his comm, "the human just struck me with its refreshment vessel." "It's what?" "Its refreshment vessel." "Kral, that's not tactically sound behavior. What is it doing?" What Jake was doing was swinging the thermos again, this time accompanied by a string of profanity that would make a sailor reconsider his vocabulary choices. He wasn't aiming. He wasn't using technique. He was just swinging and hoping something connected, which violated every principle of combat that Kralzith had ever studied. It was working. Kralzith tried to activate his defensive protocols, but they were all designed around opponents who followed logical attack patterns. The human was attacking like a malfunctioning appliance, all random motions and aggressive energy. Jake kicked at what he hoped was a knee joint, connected with something that felt crunchy. Kralzith made a sound like a dying printer. "It struck my tertiary articulation," Kralzith shouted. "Your what?" I don't know what that is in human terms. It hurts." Jake grabbed his truck keys, which had a small LED flashlight attached. and shone it directly in Kralzith's eyes while yelling about alimony payments and broken air conditioning. Kralzith's optical sensors overloaded. His tactical computer started throwing error messages. His training had covered every scenario except whatever this was. Pip, I need backup. Backup? Kral, you're the backup. You're the elite. You're supposed to be the scariest thing in the sector. The human doesn't know that! Jake, meanwhile, had moved beyond conscious thought into pure, caffeinated chaos. He grabbed the sad sandwich from his truck and threw it. The sandwich, defying all laws of physics and common sense, unwrapped mid-flight and splattered across Kralzith's faceplate. It threw its sustenance at me. Why would it do that? I don't know. Nothing makes sense. Everything I learned is useless. Kralzith tried to fall back to his shuttle, but Jake had somehow gotten between him and the exit. The human was breathing hard, sweating profusely, and had the look of a man who had stopped caring about mortality somewhere around his third divorce hearing. Where are you going? Jake wheezed. We're not done. I haven't had a good day in 6 months. You picked the wrong parking lot, wrong day, wrong human. Kralzith realized something that shattered 40 years of training and evolutionary certainty. He was afraid, not cautious, not alert. Actually, genuinely afraid, of a creature that weighed a third of what he did and had no natural weapons. Pip, he said quietly. I would like to go home now. Kral? Please. Commander Vexthor arrived 17 minutes later with a combat shuttle and 5 additional predators. He had been monitoring the mission feed and had watched his prize student get his carapace handed to him by what the database was calling an average human male. He found Kralzith hiding behind the human's vehicle, his warplate dented, his pride shattered, making soft clicking sounds that indicated deep psychological trauma. The human was sitting on the ground, drinking something from a can, looking exhausted. Kralzith, Vexthor said slowly, using his calmest voice, the one usually reserved for rookies who had accidentally shot themselves during training. Report. The human is defective, Kralzith whispered. Something is wrong with it. It doesn't have proper fear responses. It attacked me with a food storage container. Commander, it threw its own sustenance at me. Vexthor looked at the human. The human looked back. There was a long moment of mutual assessment. I made coffee, Jake said, gesturing to a small camping stove he'd set up. Because apparently when faced with an alien invasion, this human's response was to make coffee. Want some? It's better than the gas station stuff. Still not good, but better. Vexthor had commanded troops in the sector wars. He had stared down warlords and never blinked. But this was outside his operational parameters. You attacked my soldier, Vexthor said, activating his own translation matrix. Your soldier attacked me first, Jake replied. I was minding my business. He shows up with the glowing sword and the roaring. What was I supposed to do? Submit, flee, acknowledge your place in the natural order. Jake laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had been paying alimony for 3 years and no longer believed in natural order. Listen, buddy. I just drove through 5 states. My truck's making a noise that sounds like a dying walrus. My ex-wife took the dog, the house, and my retirement account. I'm 40 years old and living in a cab that smells like old tacos and regret. What exactly are you going to do to me that's worse than my current situation? More shuttles arrived, more predators. Throck landed, took one look at the scene, and immediately requested clarification from Vexthor. Is that the human? Throck growled. Yes. The one that defeated Kralzith? Apparently. It looks like it's about to cry. I'm not gonna cry, Jake said defensively. I'm just tired. There's a difference. Sisivara descended from her shuttle, her blade cloud form flickering with confusion. This is the apex specimen of their species? No, Pip's voice crackled over the comm from orbit. According to their global databases, this is what they call average. Below average, actually. His credit score is described as unfortunate. The predators looked at each other. Years of training, millennia of evolutionary superiority, entire philosophies built around the hunter and the hunted. and they were being undone by what humans apparently considered a mediocre example of their species. I need to sit down, Throck muttered. You are sitting down, Vexthor pointed out. I need to sit down more. Jake stood up, brushing dust off his jeans. Look, I don't know what you guys want. First contact? Galactic domination? Tourist information? But I'm not the guy. I'm really not the guy. I can barely dominate my own laundry schedule. Bob stepped forward. Your species confuses us. Our analysis suggests you should be prey, easy prey. Yet you fought back against a trained warrior. Yeah, well, Jake shrugged. He started it. That's your justification for combat with a superior force? I've been through a divorce. Your boy there's got nothing on Karen's lawyer. That guy's actually scary. Vexthor made a decision. As a commander, sometimes you had to admit when things had gone completely sideways. Secure the perimeter, he ordered. I'm calling this up to the council. What do I do? Jake asked. Stay there. Drink your coffee. Try not to traumatize anyone else. The Galactic Predator Council convened in emergency session, which hadn't happened in 300 years. The last time was when someone accidentally classified a hive mind as prey, and that had ended poorly for everyone. Commander Vexthor stood before the assembled leadership, his forearms held in formal positions, his scales displaying the colors of official testimony. Explain, Council Leader Dracoth rumbled. The human defeated Kralzith in single combat, Vexthor reported. Silence. Kralzith, Dracoth said slowly. Who holds the Academy record for fastest kill? That Kralzith. The same. Was the human enhanced? Battle armor? Weapons? A thermos, Counselor. It attacked with a thermos. More silence. The kind of silence that indicated the universe had stopped making sense. Kralzith stepped forward, still visibly shaken. Honorable Council, I followed all protocols. The human simply didn't respond appropriately. It was experiencing what their database calls a bad day. This condition apparently overrides their survival instinct. Pip appeared via hologram, his tentacles writhing nervously. If I may, Councillors, I've been analyzing human cultural data. They have this concept called spite, also stubbornness, also something called hold my beer, which appears to be a challenge phrase they use before doing something inadvisable. Define inadvisable, Dracoth said. Everything, sir. Nearly everything they do could be classified as inadvisable. They jump out of aircraft for recreation. They fight each other for entertainment and call it sports. They have a global network where they share videos of themselves being injured in creative ways. They invented something called parkour, which is essentially treating architecture as an obstacle course. Sir, they eat foods that cause them pain on purpose. They call it spicy. The council members looked at each other with the universal expression of beings who had just discovered their entire worldview was wrong. Classification? Dracoth asked quietly. Class X unpredictable, Vexthor recommended. With a subcategory of do not engage unless absolutely necessary, and maybe not even then. Their technological level? Early space age. Crude, but functional. However, councillors, technology isn't the concern, it's their mindset. They treat danger like an inconvenience. They treat combat like a particularly aggressive negotiation. And they have this thing where if they're already having a bad day, they genuinely stop caring about consequences. Bob spoke up from the back. I analyzed their military history. They fight themselves constantly, for thousands of years, over everything, resources, beliefs, whose imaginary friend is better. They've never had a proper predator species to keep their population in check, so they check themselves. That's horrifying, someone whispered. It gets worse, Pip continued. When they're cornered, tired, or sufficiently annoyed, they exhibit a behavioral pattern that defies survival logic. They essentially decide that if they're going down, they're taking you with them. They have multiple phrases for this: ride or die, live free or die hard, and what's the worst that could happen? Dracoth made a decision. New protocol. Earth and its inhabitants are designated as Class X unpredictable. All contact requires council approval. Standard intimidation protocols are suspended indefinitely. No lone operations, no first contact scenarios, no assuming anything about these creatures. Should we warn the other councils? Someone asked. The traders? The explorers? Send a general advisory. Keep it simple. Avoid Earth. The species is unstable. Back on Earth, Jake finally made it back to his truck. The aliens had left an hour ago after taking a bunch of readings and asking him questions about his daily routine that made him think they were more confused than hostile. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into the parking lot. Deputy Martinez got out, looking suspicious. Jake? Someone called in reports of UFOs. Jake took a long drink of his coffee, looked at the spot where an alien warship had been parked, looked back at Martinez. Nope, he said. Just a weird Tuesday. You look terrible. It's been a day, Martinez. It's been a real day. The deputy looked around the parking lot, saw nothing unusual, and shrugged. In Nevada, you learned not to ask too many questions. After Martinez left, Jake climbed into Deborah, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. Somewhere in orbit, Pip was filing his report, which would eventually make its way through the galactic bureaucracy and become legend. The legend of Earth. The death world, where even the average specimens were too tired to be scared and too stuck